And there's a lot of different ways of looking at leaking power. We talked about it in a certain context for the conversation at the time, leaking power as getting down on yourself. But there's other ways. Um, I have separated it terminology wise so that we don't get confused. But leaking power is getting down on yourself, getting down on others, telling yourself you can't do something or you shouldn't be or you should be. That's one that people may not be looking as leaking. No, it is. First of all, you have an unnecessary focus on yourself. You're thinking about yourself. And so I use two different terms now. So leaking power is very specific, how we were using the word. I don't want to change that. That's good. And another phrase that we have been using for a very long time, but it's kind of the same thing, but it's more elongated, right? Leaking power, we could look at that as acute. You are leaking power in this moment. But there is another way of looking at it where you are injuring your spirit. And Don Juan would talk about this a lot. Don Juan would run up a hill at however old he was, and he would do it faster, quicker, more efficiently, using less energy than everybody else around him. And of course, that begs the question, and Carlos asked it. He's like, how are you doing this? And again, whether this story is true or untrue or imaginative or, documentative, whether they're documenting live events, real events, or they're just making it up, the answer still has juice. Like it still matters. And the answer, Don Juan said, is, well, it's not what I do, it's what I don't do. It's what I'm not doing. And I know we can't not do something, but this is just a way of talking about things. He's just trying to explain a concept that I don't injure my spirit. I don't do things that cause me to, and this is how it relates to leaking power. I don't do things that interfere with the accumulative factor. And a habit that has started to accumulate over time that maybe we're not aware of as much. It sneaks in and it's starting to gain some momentum. If that continues, it will be injurious to the spirit. And there's one easy way to define this. Existing in an extreme injures the spirit. It's a principle. Buddha, I don't think it was Buddha who said this. I think this is just, how people are. They have a saying and they attribute it to who they think is the most appropriate for that saying. But attachment isn't the source of suffering because the source of attachment is existing in an extreme. You have allowed yourself to indulge an extreme point, and that indulgence leads to attachment. And then the attachment, depending on the severity, when the object or item or situation or whatever of attachment is removed, well, then that's when all the suffering comes. You feel the suffering when the aspect or item of attachment is removed. So somebody says, well, how do I know I'm attached to my coffee cup? Well, what would happen if I broke it? What would happen if I stole it? What would happen if you couldn't find it? How much suffering would that cause you? Or, as Ida was pointing out, would we have an acute technique, which is go back to our four directions, maybe some rapid redirection, maybe some talking to ourselves in a productive way, maybe reminding ourselves of the warrior principles and taking into consideration where my mind should be in this particular situation. And then the accumulated momentum of that, well, if I'm not very consistent with my practice and I'm just doing it, blah, and it's just like every now and then, I'm checking into my four directions. Oh no, when something like Edith was describing happens, oh, you're going to be thrown way off. You're probably going to be leaking power and injuring your spirit all at the same time. And these are just ways of describing things, categories, of course, because if we got down to it, leaking power is injuring the spirit. Injuring the spirit is leaking. I'm just, creating categories so that we can more functionally discuss it in a life application type of thing.